Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. So this is the second video in making your own DIY container soil, raised bed soil, garden soil. The video that I just did yesterday, check that out in my video description, shows you how to make this. Today we're going to amend it up. A couple of things I want to clear up. So the whole goal is how to make garden soil much more cheaply than going in and buying it in the big bags. And again, if you want to spend money on the bigger bags, I just want you to understand what's in there. So a couple of things. This says organic, and just so that you know, the USDA does not regulate bag soils. So organic statement on here doesn't really mean a whole lot. None of these soils are tested in any way to tell you what's in them. That's not what organic means. So you don't know what you're getting in the soil. Organic gardening, for instance, if you want to be at an organic farm, you have to not have chemical fertilizers used on that soil for 3 years, and then you can start being deemed organic. So just to clarify, whenever you see organic on any of these bags, it doesn't mean anything. There's no value to it really. It's really just advertising. So you want to know what's in this material, check out the previous video for that. So when we're adding things into here, we're going to be thinking about where are they going. So the first mix that I made last time looks really, really good. Nice and loose. We did 50% topsoil, 50% peat moss. This is perfect for a container. So the first thing I want to talk about is how would I kind of dress this up for container gardening. So first thing is you can buy any organic fertilizer. It doesn't matter what you buy as long as N, P, and K are represented. In this one, this is a 4-4-4 N, P, and K. 4% nitrogen, 4% phosphorus, 4% potassium. What I do is I buy whatever's on sale, I throw it all in a bucket and mix it together. Those percentages don't really mean a whole lot. The other thing that you're going to see is when you're buying these bag products, you're going to see tomato fertilizer, pepper fertilizer, leafy green fertilizer, fruit fertilizer, heirloom tomato fertilizer I've even seen. That's all garbage. Those vegetables don't need specific fertilizers. Now yes, like for peppers, maybe you want more phosphorus in your soil. You can worry about that later. You're just buying any organic granular fertilizer that looks like this. And when you use this, it's going to be a slow release fertilizer. These granules, this dry granules, has to break down over time. So it takes a good 2 months to 4 months for this to break down and really be available to your plant. But you want to put it in now. We're also going to put on some water soluble on the plants at planting time. We're going to use water soluble fertilizers. If you want to subscribe and follow, I will talk more about water solubles in a future video. But any organic granular works. If you're on a budget, this is all you really need to add to it. I'm going to talk about worm castings. This is also my compost. So I wanted to clarify a little bit when I said, the numbers don't matter on your organic granular fertilizer. So this is my garden. All of it's being pretty much grown with, the techniques that I'm showing you. So when you buy the organic granulars, if you look at the ingredients, it's a lot of the same ingredients. Bone meal, blood meal, chicken, poultry manure, other kinds of stuff added in there. So the ingredients are pretty much similar. You just have to make sure that you represent in there the N, P, and K. So that may be like a 5-4-4 N, P, and K, a 3-6-6 N, P, and K. These are some giant radishes being grown with the techniques of setting up your beds that I'm showing you. Those numbers are going to vary, but when you're scattering it into the soil, you're just putting in the basic N, P, and K. As you get smarter with fertilizers, let's just say, more experienced with fertilizers, or you just have a real interest in tweaking the N, P, and K, you can do more with it. But this is just the basic way to feed your plants. The organic granular is going to slowly break down over time. So in future videos, I'll be talking about using the water-soluble fertilizers. They immediately provide N, P, and K to your plants. So when you plant, you water it in with the water-soluble, they get what they need. The organic granular slowly breaks down over time, and then you have that nice slow supply of N, P, and K going to your plants. Now remember, if you have a ton of compost, you can just use compost. I also mix that into here. this provides nutrients that are just wonderful. So when you think about it, compost itself is really well below a 111 NP and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. In fact, it's more like 0.01, 0.01, 0.01. The whole key is just having a low, slow, steady supply of all the nutrients your plants need. It doesn't have to be high concentrations. If you want to add in like kelp meal and azomite and rock dust and all that, you can go ahead and do that. But what I'm showing you is the basics. And the basics right now, any organic granular fertilizer. If you have compost, we're going to add that in there too. It would be I would have a terrible gardening channel if I just said, just use compost. If it was that easy, you know, you wouldn't need this video. For containers, you might also want to add in some garden lime, and that would just be really in a quantity I'll show you in a second. It's just a handful of garden lime. That's going to add in calcium, and that helps just provide a main nutrient. It's actually a second level nutrient, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, that tomato plants need and other plants need so they don't get blossom end rot. So let's set up. I'm going to show you how I add these in here. This is just the basic setup. You can do more if you want, but this is going to work perfectly fine for containers. All right, the first run through, just the basics. This will get you by for sure. This is about 1.5 to 2 cubic feet of material. This just gives you a sense. I don't measure by the tablespoon. It just doesn't make sense to me. So if you want, one thing you can add, if I can get it out of here, my hand's too big. There we go. A handful of garden lime. This way you know you have calcium in there, and that's really more important for your containers. 1 handful, 2 handful, 3 handfuls of the organic granular fertilizer. And this is a great setup for any container mix. This will get you started. It's not expensive. You can fill your container. Half topsoil, half peat moss. We have the fertilizer in there, and you would just go ahead and fill your containers. And again, please follow me. I'll be using this I'm actually planting up vertical towers. Now, if you have it, 1, 2, 3, and look at all the worms that are in there. So you're adding soil life into here by adding in the compost. That soil life, those microbes, will help break down the organic fertilizer, will give nutrients to your plant. And this is just the basic setup that I use for my containers. If you want to make it yourself, this is a great way to do it. I'll also be recommending in future videos which product I like if you want to just buy something out of the bag. But look how wonderful that is. You know, if you have a ton of compost, compost is pretty much free, but the labor you put into making it, let's get rid of that. If you don't have a ton of compost, but you can make some, this is perfect. All right, so that's the first level. Nothing fancy. Next, because they're in containers, I like using worm castings. I am affiliated with Vermisterra. If you check out the video description, you'll see a coupon code in there if you want to pick up worm castings. Now these are aged and sifted, and they're just beautiful. So in something like this, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. Worm castings have natural growth hormones. They just add wonderful things to your container mix. And your container mix is not like the ground, where the ground has everything really in there. There's a piece of plastic. Let's get rid of that too. You never know what you're going to find in bagged products. To me, this is a premium potting mix once I add in the castings. You can add in other stuff. You know, I don't want to go down the list because sometimes that overwhelms people. I used to use more of the other stuff, but just found over time this works really, really well. And now that I'm on a bigger property, I am in the process of making tons of compost, so I do lean more heavily towards that. All right, so let's do the second part. That's going to focus more on going right into the raised bed. So before we get to the raised bed, this is my no-dig garden. So don't let anyone on the internet or anything that you read freak you out when they say turning your soil's killing your soil life, it's wrecking your soil. That's not true. You can turn your soil all you want. You just don't have to after a certain amount of time. Or if you have enough compost, this was set up 2 or 3 years ago. I put cardboard down, 6 inches of compost all the way across it. This year, I put down another 4 to 6 inches of compost on there. So I basically just built the soil up right on top of there. Your plants love to thrive, the shallow roots in that top 4, 6, 8 inches, and then they send roots down to the bottom. Tons of compost, fine. Just throw it down there. You can plant right on it, but it has to be well-aged and well-prepared compost. It can't be in the process of breaking down. This was all well-aged. So I don't need to dig or turn my bed. When you hear that, it's really about getting that, massive tiller and grinding down the soil, chopping up the worms. You don't need to do that, but you can put the shovel in, you can turn it over. So when we go over to my raised bed, I'm on year 4 of my garden. I turn the soil for the first 2-3 years. Now the soil's pretty good, I don't have to turn it anymore, so I'm not going to dig it as much. But if you're just getting started, digging the soil is okay. I don't want you to be freaked out when you hear don't turn the soil, it kills microbes. Microbes are bright, they've been around for billions of years. They figure out how to repopulate the layers of the soil, and they multiply incredibly fast. So the only thing that I would really do different is we had the 50-50 mix that we did in the first video and I talked about. You saw that I added in some compost and stuff for containers. That's all a nice basic mix for containers. If I was filling this raised bed right here, this is 6-inch sides, I would probably do 2/3 of this material and then 1/3 of either well-aged compost, well-aged manure, combination of both, also combination of leaf grow or leaf mold mixed in there. That's going to be the organic matter. So it's 1/3 really nice organic matter of manure, compost, leaf grow, just one of each of those, combination of all 3. That's going to just make a really nice raised bed mix. And then I would put cardboard down on here and then just fill up that top 6 inches with that material you made. It already has the organic granular in, just like we did when we made the container mix. That would fill my bed. Some of us are going to have beds that are already filled. So let me show you what I do. First thing that I do is, and keep in mind, like I do prep in the fall, I do prep in the spring. You don't have to do everything that I show you. So let's just say you weren't able to prep the beds well and you're just getting ready for your spring planting. This is the organic granular, and literally just a sprinkle like that on the surface. So I would go over the entire surface and it kind of just stays on there until I get things worked in. That is just a basic organic granular top dressing. And again, I just want to clarify, my beds are now into their 4th year. So when you're first starting, you're going to have to use more bagged products. You're going to have to make more of your own soil, potting mix, etc. So it'll take some time to set the beds up. Once they're set up, that's when you can stop relying on having to make it like we did today and in the previous video, and rely more on compost. Maybe you still can't make it, but you can order compost from local municipalities or from other places. Your soil's already set up. You don't really need to use the bag products, make this kind of stuff. You could then just drop that compost on there in the fall and in the spring, and your garden will be good to go. My soil is pretty good. If you flip it over, you can see some orange in there. That's what my soil starts out. It was really clay. So it took a while to get this to be, better. Those are weeds on top of there. There's nothing growing. That's why you can then just loosen up your soil like that. You're not wrecking the soil life or anything like that. Trust me, I've been doing this for 30 years. And then in there, you could put more of the mix that you just made. Really dress up the top 4 inches by throwing in that mix. You can always add more. You can always go crazy with the Cheese Whiz and put in different amendments that you like. But this is getting better and better over time. Plants are going to like growing in there. That's really about all I do. I mean, it's not fancy. If I were going to plant tomatoes, I would scoop out some of that This is where I like using the worm castings because of the benefits right in the hole, not through the whole garden, it gets too expensive, but right where you're going to be planting. Maybe a tablespoon or two right in there. You never want to plant right on granular fertilizer. And this is a basic planting hole that you can use just about for any transplant. And then in there, some of the stuff we just made. Again, if you had compost, you don't need the stuff that we just made. You could just be putting compost in there, but maybe some point you'll get to that. Really loosen it up, mix it around, and that is just a beautiful place to plant any of your transplants. You would drop it in, backfill, you're good to go. You save money by concentrating the worm castings right where you're planting. You put down some basic organic granular, you have compost mixed in there, just water it in, walk away. This is the simplest approach to just setting up your garden. You can get fancier, you can do more, but this is kind of how I recommend to get started. Don't overthink it, just get growing. 4 years later, let's get away from what I just fixed. 4 years later, your soil's going to start looking like that. And good soils are not about making it perfect your first year. It's about adding in organic matter like manures, compost, leaf mold, leaves, anything organic. And then over time, you end up with something like this. I can really now just start putting down 1 or 2 inches of compost on here. I don't need to dig and turn this. I always like creating a planting hole like I showed you. This is where you'll be in 4 years. Thanks for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. And don't overspend, or at least understand what you're spending your money on when you're buying bag products and you're buying amendments for your garden. Thanks for watching.